Good morning, John. Thank you for joining.
Good morning. Hey guys.
Good to see you.
Good morning, John.
What's going on?
Just want to let you know we're going to get started at 9:32. I already sent a chat to everyone.
Great.
Okay, Nicole, if you want to go ahead and get started, we're ready to go. Unmute yourself.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Greta. Can everybody hear me? Okay, great. Well, first of all, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's event. I am deeply grateful for your time, attention, and interest in our community. I feel like we are all friends around the table, so I want to say thank you to all of you for being with us. First, allow me to thank our sponsor, City National Bank, for their unwavering support, and our partners, American University Center on Latin American and Latino Studies and the Cogwood School of Business. I also want to thank the panelists for joining us today and giving of their time to participate in what we feel is a very important conversation. I appreciate you guys. And of course, a heartfelt thank you to my staff and the board of directors who allow us to do the work that we do every day. Today's webinar, Defining Our Region's Resources for Latino-Owned Businesses Amidst the Pandemic, will provide an opportunity to discuss the results of a survey done in collaboration with our partners at American University with the intention of analyzing the effects of COVID on our regional Hispanic small businesses that many of us have come to know and love over the years. From the beginning of March, Latino-owned businesses have been the focus of a large number of studies. As a matter of fact, one study by the Stanford Latino Entrepreneur Initiative was released just a few days ago. And the reason for this focus is because of the understanding of the significant impact Latino-owned businesses have on our local communities and our nations as a whole. Small businesses are the lifeblood of our economy. We know this. And the same thing goes for our Hispanic chamber. Hispanic businesses are the lifeblood of our chamber. Founded in 1976, we now have 750 members. Our chamber is focused on providing our businesses with the necessary tools to survive, thrive, learn, grow, and gain access to contacts, contracts, and capital. Now, before COVID, Hispanics were opening up businesses at a rate 50 times faster than any other demographic group. So our ability to contribute to any local, regional, and national economy and increase productivity has been made perfectly clear. As such, the intentional understanding and support of our community pre, during, and post-COVID will without a doubt result in a faster recovery for all of us. So the report is intended to help all of us, leaders of economic development agencies, chambers of commerce, regional corporations, community-based organizations, public and private financial institutions, government officials, and any other decision maker in the region to continue identifying policies and programs that could help Latino small businesses during this time. As always, please know that our chamber, its board of directors, members, and staff are here to help along the way. And with that, ladies, gentlemen, and friends, allow me to introduce the co-author of the report, Research Associate Professor of the Center on Latin American and Latino Studies, Robert Alba. Robert?
Well, thank you, Nicole. First of all, I'd just like to thank you and the Greater Washington Hispanic Chamber of Commerce for organizing the event. Our Center for Latin American Latino Studies very much appreciates the ongoing close relationship we've shared with the Chamber. I look forward to hearing from our panelists, and together with my co-author, Eric Hershberg, our Center Director, I'll be happy to further comment on the survey's results and the report and to answer any questions. So for the moment, all I will do is just briefly summarize some of the study's key findings. Just to give you some quick context for the study, nearly 1 million Latinos live in our region, over half of whom are foreign born. Latinos are the region's largest and most rapidly growing minority group. They're also the group most likely to start a business. There are around 66,000 or so Latino-owned businesses in our area, and that composes about 12% of the overall regional economy. Importantly, and I want to underscore this, and I think Nicole alluded to it, Latino businesses do not just serve Latinos. Fewer than 1 in 5 of those businesses that we surveyed claimed their customers were mostly Latino. This highlights, I think, the extent to which Latino business growth is increasingly about regional economic growth. So briefly, some of our key findings from our survey of 152 area Latino business owners, which was undertaken primarily during the months of April to June over a 6-month period, or a 6-week period. And again, I'm happy to discuss any more of these in greater depth later. So 65% of all the businesses we surveyed reported having to undertake extreme or many changes as a result of the pandemic. Place-based and in-person small businesses appear most at risk. Almost 3/4 of all businesses have suffered what we might describe as catastrophic losses of customers and revenue. And the same amount have experienced closures, temporary stops, or layoffs. Though some sectors within the overall Latino business community are better positioned, we would argue, than others to do so, overall, the number of businesses able to move online or to adapt to telework strategies is relatively small. And we suspect in part this is because so many are have to rely on a physical location as part of their business model. Latino businesses are also typically not well networked with financial assistance institutions such as banks, but also appear not to be benefiting from timely and professional business advising. And so one of the things we found was that up to 1/4 of those surveyed were not precisely sure how to proceed to respond to the economic crisis precipitated by the pandemic. When asked, however, the most urgent recommendation offered by an overwhelming number of Latino business owners, 94%, was for more help in facilitating access to loans or grants, because these are businesses that are experiencing a severe crisis of liquidity. The DC metro region is among the most diverse in the country, and in recent years, cities and counties, local jurisdictions throughout our region have placed increasing importance on incorporating attention to equity in planning and in development. The combined effects of the pandemic have significantly amplified existing disparities. Latino-owned businesses are a key piece of the equity puzzle, and what steps we take to support them during and after the crisis will be important, not just for those businesses, but for the region's economy as a whole. So with those brief comments and that quick overview, I'll stop here, and I look forward to the discussion to follow.
Great. Thank you, Robert. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the work that we've done over the last 2 years and most definitely over the last 5 months. Thank you. Now I would like to welcome Juan Hada, Senior Vice President of City National Bank and Chairman of the Greater Washington Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, a person who's been fiercely dedicated to our chamber's work and to the duty of lifting our small businesses up truly as we move forward through these challenges. Juan.
Thank you, Nicole. Good morning, everyone. Buenos dias a todos. First of all, I hope everyone in the audience is safe and healthy. And I really appreciate you taking the time to join us on this very important and timely discussion with our panelists. When the pandemic began, it felt that it was going to be just a few weeks of quarantining at our homes and pausing our daily lives. We quickly realized that it was going to be more painful than that. We at the Chamber devised ways to continue to help our members and the business community at large in Greater Washington. With support of our sponsors and board of directors, we were able to quickly provide resources for our members to continue doing business the best way they could, connecting them to resources to pivot their business models or matching them with advisors to get ready to apply for PPP funding. These past few months, we have witnessed the tenacity and ingenuity of Latino entrepreneurs. They change their focus as needed, finding new opportunities when there seem to be none. But we know we can do more to help and continue the prosperity that our region experienced prior to COVID-19. We're very thankful of our partnership with the American University's Center for Latin American and Latino Studies, and we're really honored to welcome our panelists today. I'm going to point out that we made sure that we encompass the entire region, not only Washington, D.C., and so we have representatives from Montgomery County, Maryland, as well as Fairfax, Virginia. And also Mark Madrid is joining us, someone who has supported our business community for many years. And he is actually in Arizona, so he's quite early for him. Let me start by introducing our friends. I'll start with John Falsicio. John has been a longtime friend of our chamber, recently appointed as Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development. Congratulations, John. John has served as the Mayor's Chief of Staff since the start of Mayor Muriel Bowser's administration. Happy to have you here. Christy Whitfield is the Director of the DSLBD, that stands for Department of Small and Local Business Development, a government agency with a mission to support the development, economic growth, retention of district-based businesses. I'll tell you this, in my walk around the city, right around phase 1, I saw the team of Director Whitfield's handing out PPE packages to business owners to make sure that they were ready to open their doors. And you know, they had boxes with gloves and hand sanitizer and masks. And this is really how you help impact the community, make sure that we have the tools that we need. I was really impressed by that, Christy. Thank you. Victor Hoskins, who just celebrated 1 year of being President and CEO of the Fairfax County Economic Development Authority. Welcome, Victor. Prior to this, he was in Arlington, where he most notably attracted HQ2 to Arlington. Prior to that, in DC, he helped with the development of the Wharf and City Center. Victor, you should know that today, we, City National Bank, are opening our doors for our first location in Fairfax at the borough. So I think you should add that to your resume before you talk about HQ2.
Done, Juan, done.
Thanks for being here. Jerome Fletcher from Montgomery County. We're really happy to have you here. Assistant Chief Administrative Officer of the county, brings more than 20 years of government experience, including success in the economic impact of small business community, and also at the federal level. A huge advocate for diversity and inclusion. We are happy to have you with us today, Jerome. And as I said, Mark Madrid, President and CEO of the Latino Business Action Network, LBAN. LBAN collaborates with the Stanford Graduate School of Business to champion the Stanford Latino Entrepreneur Initiative. I'm going to say that in other words. In other words, Mark Madrid has helped many of the businesses, Latino-owned businesses, to find the tools and resources to scale their business. We have proud members of our chamber who have attended the program with the help of Mark, and we have seen the transformation of their businesses, particularly now during the pandemic, how they've been able to change their business model and how they've used the relationships that they built at Stanford to be able to be successful and try to do their best during these trying times. Good to have you, Mark. Wonderful. So we'll start our panel now. We have obviously a few questions for you. I know the community at large is very interested in your opinions on how we can go through this really difficult and notably times that we haven't seen before. So let's start with John. John, how do you see the Latino businesses contributing to our local economy before COVID? And what do you think we can do to help us be successful?
Well, good morning, and thanks for having me, Juan. And you know, the one thing about the pandemic is that it allows us to see people in a different way. Literally, we are all kind of seeing a view into people's offices or homes. I'm actually here at home right now, and behind me is a painting that I actually got in Cuba with the trip that the mayor did in 2016 with the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, a trade mission to Cuba, and it's part of my home. I like to say that it is actually me in retirement, and with the pandemic, people have said that I'm actually starting to look a little bit older than the guy in the painting. But with that having been said, you know, the pandemic has obviously been a time of great stress for all of us. And what we've done, Juan, like you said, was the work that when you highlighted the work of Christy, we've tried to be a bridge to businesses, including Latino businesses, to make sure that they have the tools that they need to be successful and to weather the storm that we're all in collectively. And so what we've always done is try to make sure that our outreach connects with the community that we're trying to serve. And we know that the Latino community, their impact is beyond just the community itself. They're part of our broader economy. And so we're proud that we've worked with our sister agencies, like the work you highlighted with Christy to get PPE out to businesses when we were entering into phase one. And we've also really worked with businesses in order to make sure that the technical assistance was there so that they could navigate all the grant programs and the loan programs that they could avail themselves to. And so what I like to say is that the conversation is ongoing about how we can continue to help. And so we're open to ideas about it. But for we take nothing for granted in terms of the contributions that the Latino community has made to the District of Columbia, and we're here to be able to continue to coordinate with the community as well.
We really appreciate that. Oftentimes we hear from our members on how is it that we can help as a chamber, and one of the things that we certainly do best is connecting them to local agencies and see that they can get the support that they can to continue doing business and operating in the area. Victor, what are your thoughts about the same questions, the impact of the Latino-owned businesses in Fairfax? And obviously you can also talk about Arlington since you spent so much time there.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, Juan. And Nicole has always been a great partner with me, whether I was in Maryland or DC or Arlington, wherever I've been. She's been a great partner. And the organization, Greater Washington Hispanic Chamber, has been really a powerful partner. I'm honored to be on with these amazing people. You got John Jerome, you got you got the heavy hitters here. You got Mark from the West Coast. I feel like, you know, listen, I'm just happy to be here. In terms of Hispanic businesses in Fairfax County, just a couple of stats. So we have about 128,000 business establishments in Fairfax County. It's a huge county. It's 1.1 million people. the number of Hispanics businesses is about 10% of that, roughly 12,000. So about 12,000 businesses, establishments that are Hispanic establishments. They fall into basically 3 areas: in construction, administrative support, food and beverage, and also professional services and technology, because we have a huge technology population. As a matter of fact, some of the largest technology, Hispanic technology companies in the country are in Fairfax County, and we're honored to have them there. In terms of what the impact has been, the first thing that we wanted to do is give them the tools to get back on their feet. So this is kind of a phased approach. And I have to say, the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors were very courageous. They started out with a $1.5 million loan program for businesses that had 49 employees or less. The majority of the businesses, the Hispanic businesses, have for less than 50 employees. So that was really the target market. In addition to that, I guess all I can say is it was courageous. The county put forward $25 million in grants for small business. That was to help the ones that couldn't borrow and couldn't do PPP and couldn't do EIDL, but really needed something to just stay on their feet, pay their rent, take care of inventory. And that, I think we got 6,300 applications for that program. And the Economic Initiatives team actually convinced the board to take a further step and add another $20 million to that. So the program is now $45 million. And we're not the only jurisdiction that's done this. Montgomery County has done this. Prince William County has done this. Loudoun County. And we're working with all the Northern Virginia counties to make sure that these resources get to all businesses. The interesting thing is that when you look at the loan applications for that first program, 90% were minority-owned firms. And we haven't broken it down into demographics, but they were minority-owned or women-owned firms. In the grant program, almost 70% were minority-owned or women-owned firms. So we know we're hitting the target market. We'll have some more details in a couple of months as these applications are approved. But what we did initially is what everyone did, which is save these businesses, do as much as we can to save these businesses. And that meant funding. Now, beyond that, we've gone into technical assistance. There is a 12 installment workshop series going on right now. We're coming up on number 9. The first were on recovery. The second were how to adjust your business. The third is on growth. And we're sponsoring this with all of the economic development entities in all of Northern Virginia. There are 10 of them. So I'll stop right there because I know there are a lot more people to talk, but I just wanted to kind of get out there that we're in the trenches with everyone.
That's a fantastic statistic. Like Robert mentioned earlier, one of the primary needs is access to funding. And be it grants or PPP lending, whatever efforts that we can put together as a chamber, but also at your jurisdictions, is hugely impactful and important to our Latino-owned businesses, but truly any business that contributes to the economy here in Greater Washington. Mark, question for you. Maybe you can give us some perspective about Latino business owners in general and nationally, and how the pandemic has impacted our constituents.
Thank you, Juan. First and foremost, energized to be here. Great early morning from the West Coast. Thank you to the Greater Washington Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. When I started this position at LBAN, a national 501c3 organization, I thought it was important to build bridges, including the one to Washington. So thank you for making that happen. As well, thank you to the board, of course, Nicole, David, Greta, the team, Juan, City National Bank for making this possible. And I'm delighted to be with, Robert, John, Christy, Ben, and Victor. Great to be with you all. And how exciting is this for the Greater Washington Hispanic Chamber of Commerce to partner with academia and American University? That is absolutely essential. Without data, we don't have movement. We don't have a sense of urgency. And I also appreciate what I've heard in terms of the support of Mayor Bowser and the county dignitaries that are here from Montgomery and Fairfax. But let's start with an injection of good news. Actually, it's great news, and framing where Latinos stand in terms of powering the American economy. I'm going to cite some reflections from the Latino Donor Collaborative, LDC. The chairman of that organization is Saul Trujillo, who sits on our board. And consider this, if Latinos, if US Latinos, if we constituted our own country, we'd be the eighth largest GDP in the world. So hoping that sets into everybody. Eighth largest GDP in the world, $2.3 trillion. And the Latino GDP would be the third fastest growing. So that is fresh data from 2019. In terms of growth, the Latino GDP, I'm excited to report this, is projected to account for 24.4% of total US GDP growth by 2020. And Latinos are responsible for 82% of the growth of the US labor force, since the financial crisis, the Great Recession of 2007 and 8, which I have some battle scars from that. I'm sure many of you do as well. So Latinos are resilient. We're powering the US economy. And in terms of our specialty at LBAN, entrepreneurship, Latino and Latina entrepreneurship, consider this. Over the last 10 years, this is fresh data from 2019, the growth in Latino and Latina business owners, or Latinx, over the last 10 years, positive 34%. Everyone else, 1%. So I hope you're as excited as I am to continue to shift the narrative, citing that Latinos and Latinas are driving the American economy, because it is truth. It is backed up by data. And that data that I reported to in terms of the entrepreneurship growth in Latinx compared to everyone else is coming from a report that we fund from Stanford University, specifically the Stanford Graduate School of Business. LBAN, a national 501c3 nonprofit, we collaborate with Stanford University, and we champion this unicorn called the Stanford Latino Entrepreneurship Initiative. So 3 quick priorities for us. We fund this research, which is very powerful at Stanford, coming from a Research One institution with the highest academic rigor. It is the most comprehensive data in the United States. How can we say that and claim it? What's the largest sample size in existence to date? The second thing that we do is our research cites over and over again that only 3% of our ecosystem of Latinx entrepreneurs are scaled. And what we mean by that is over $1 million of annual gross revenues, only 3%. So we're doing something about that. There's a reason that there's action in our name. And what we do is we recruit nationally and across the US and Puerto Rico, these top 3%ers, and to embark on a scaling program at Stanford Graduate School of Business. And so over the course of the last 4.5 years, we've graduated 653 scaled Latinx entrepreneurs from this immersive program. It's an 8-week online program, and combined annual gross revenues for this group, and we should all just champion this from the rooftops. Annual combined gross revenues for this group of 653 is north of $3.3 billion. And so we're excited about that. We hope, no, we don't hope, we will have 5,000 graduates by 2050 with projected annual gross revenues north of $50 billion. Having said that, it's a very, very difficult time right now. COVID-19 is disproportionately affecting Latinx, as you know, across this country. And I'll just go personal with you right now. It's hit home for me. I'm actually in Lake Havasu City, Arizona, on a long road trip back from Abilene, Texas. The reason I drove from Northern California to Abilene is my father passed away a week and a half ago from COVID-19. In addition to that, my mother was COVID positive. My sister was COVID positive. It was one of those family tragedies that I still think that I'm in a nightmare, to be honest with you, especially driving 1,800 miles back and reflecting now having a chance to mourn because I was very busy there with all that was going on in the crisis. So I can tell you from personal experience that COVID is affecting Latinos and Latinas across the United States. And it's not only us from a personal standpoint, but it's also the businesses. Our Latino and Latina businesses are at stake here. So I'm thrilled that you are partnering with American University. When I see that in this report, thank you, Robert, for staging and setting that up, but that most owners report that COVID-19 in this region, Washington, DC region, they report extreme effects, with only 10% reporting no or minimal impact, only 10%. So I'd like to shine a national light right quick. I'll give you the Cliff Notes version, and I'll make sure and support and give you these resources, which are downloadable and shareable. The report that I'm about to cite, The Ongoing Impact of COVID-19 on Latino-Owned Businesses, is a national report. Thank you, Greater Washington Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, for putting a spotlight on this, because the report was only released last week. So it's hot off the press, with the robust sample size of 7,000, comparing employer Latinx firms to non-minority or white firms. So let me reveal some of these findings for you. Overall, we find that despite the challenges that are similar to what we're seeing in the DC region, that Latino and Latina business owners remain optimistic about being able to recover from negative effects. You know what that comes down to is that ganas, that true grit, that common denominator that binds all Latino and Latina business owners together. But here is the flip side of that. When it comes to PPP funding, the Paycheck Protection Program, in terms of Latinx approval rates, it was half that of white business owners. Half that of white business owners. As well, when we take a look at breaking that down in terms of the dollar of funding that was received, again, Latinx, they didn't get the full funding, and they even got a smaller percentage as compared to white business owners, 3% compared to 7%. I'll give you one silver lining on all this. The scaling program that we do at Stanford. So graduates of the program, coming back to those 653, 82% of that cluster received PPP funding. 82%. Now you compare that we're talking scale firms, right? Over $1 million of annual gross revenues. Compare that to only 18% of scaled Latinx businesses overall receiving PPP funding, and 28% of scaled white businesses receiving PPP funding. 82% compared to 18% and 28%. So what is that secret sauce, Mark Madrid? Well, this group has been mobilized. We have an alumni portal that bands all of them together, including, Angelique Sina from the GWHCC. And so with that device, we were able, from the outbreak of the pandemic, to deliver breaking news from credible sources directly from the SBA, the Treasury, the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, in some instances, of course, the small business development centers across the United States, and experts in policy. And so as well, this group, they have access to networks. So they developed a peer-to-peer platform amongst each other. In real time, we were able to assess chatter. We were able to do snap polls. So this group was able to navigate through all the confusion. Why is this important? It's important because now we're looking at a new tranche and layer of legislative approval for disaster recovery resources. We're also looking for the outcome, the decision when it comes to PPP forgiveness. The portal for PPP forgiveness is up, but when will it be available for the masses? And will those loan sizes under $150,000 be forgiven? And then what's next? This pandemic, according to the report that you might reflect on, it's 12, 18, 24 months of effects here. So the bottom line is, we've got to create access to networks. We've got to create access to capital. And what I mean by capital, we got to get fintech involved. Thank you to City National Bank, our national banking partners, to be innovative, to look at retooling CRA initiatives, to look at working with us to streamline efforts with the Treasury and SBA, to make sure that we're on the policy table, both at the local level, municipal level, such as Washington, DC, working our way through the county. Thank you, counties, for being here, to the state level and federal. So in some instances, it's about top down. In this case, it's about bottom up. That's why the work here at the Greater Washington Hispanic Chamber of Commerce is so critical, and why this particular session, I hope you share it with all your networks. And then secondly, it's important for us to make sure that our Latino and Latina entrepreneurs are on the front end of opportunities. You know, what I've seen and experienced firsthand is the further along something progresses, like the PPP program, there's a loss of, let's say, maybe faith. Is it really for me? Am I going to be left out again, as I was during the Great Recession, when I was after 9/11, when I was during weather catastrophes? So we want to be the igniters, the catalyzers, the encouragers, like you all here. We want to say, get involved from the front end. There's also one other thing I'd like to add. Our Latino and Latina entrepreneurs, some of them are a little reluctant to take on more debt of any kind. They're worried about debt saturation. So in some cases, we need to encourage debt leverage, the traditional capital markets term. So with all that said, I come back down to Fanatic Hope. Fanatic Hope and this growing segment, the fastest growing segment in the country. The Fanatic Hope and the grit and ganas of this group. So we've got to step up. We've got to be a conglomerate of action, not just words. And we've got to be at the table, and we've got to involve these businesses at the table. That's the bottom line. And I hear stories all day long about our COVID superheroes, our Latino and Latina entrepreneurs saving the day. So with that said, let's move this ship together. We've got to be oaring in the right direction. It's not going to be easy, but if anyone can do it, it's us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
I didn't need that second cup of coffee. I just needed to listen to Mark to get the energy that I needed this morning. And
right.
and first of all, I'm sorry that you had to experience such pain with COVID. I think that it's something that all of us in the panel and the attendees share with you. And we hope that you are well and that you recover, and so does your family. But also, you're right. It is our task as the Chamber of Commerce to bring those solutions to Latino-owned businesses and any of our constituents, which is why we put this panel together. I also want to make note that this panel is not exclusive. It's not all inclusive. We have help from other jurisdictions in the Greater Washington area. Denny Taveras, Prince George's County Council member, is present as an attendee. And we just couldn't have everyone, unfortunately, but we'll have one more of these so that we can have everyone's voice listened to, but also you sharing how you can help businesses in the area, which is so important to us.
Thank you, Juan, for mentioning that. We also did get requests from Loudoun County, Prince William County, Prince George's County, all of whom are doing tremendous work as well, because they also have a high population of Latinos and Latino-owned businesses. So more to follow.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about Montgomery County. Mr. Fletcher, as you get ready to reopen and to re-energize the community at large in Montgomery County, what are some ways that you think you can do that specifically with the Latino businesses?
Hey, good morning, Juan, and thank you again for having me. And let me just say again, I echo what you said. Mark, sorry for your loss, but thanks for sharing, and we do appreciate the information you provided. It was very positive. It's been a long time since we've heard some positive news, so thank you again. So in Montgomery County, we are very focused, of course, on the Latino community and our small business community. And as Victor stated earlier, the grant program that we released with $25 million was extremely successful, with us giving out grants to over 2,000 businesses, as well as receiving over 7,000 applications. But we know that we can't stop there, because as you said, this is going to keep going for quite some time. So we're ramping up our efforts to not only reduce the language barrier, which is one of the biggest ones in Montgomery County. We are partnering with our media, whether it's Radio America, Telemundo, Univision, to put our different programs out to the public so that they can be aware of it. We as a government tend to believe that people either, one, understand everything that we say, or two, they're just sitting around waiting for us to tell it to them. We have to be very proactive in our efforts to make sure that we reach the target audience. We also have a small business networked TV show that we are now releasing in Spanish as well, to make sure that we have the language barrier covered. The access to capital, as the pandemic hit, that became the first priority for a lot of us, and I will say that it was already a priority for us. We believe that that is the hugest barrier, and we're always trying to make way through that. And the PPP and the PPE and the other programs at the federal level, loans are great and loans are fine, but when you can give grants to those who need it so that they don't, incur that debt, like you said, to me, that is the win, and that is where the positive impact actually occurs. So from that level and those standpoints, we are making sure that we include our Latino community in those. And also, let me just say that, we are creating a business resiliency center. And what that will look like is we are trying to put the programming that we already had going prior to the COVID crisis, which was called a Business Connect program, where we were partnering with our other program providers to make sure those who needed have access to our services. We're taking it up another level. So we'll have disaster recovery programs available at the same time as we have, new programs for those who look at this crisis as a chance of opportunity, who want to start over and create a new business now, because we do believe that there's going to be an influx of those people who are going to have to make career-changing decisions, and we want to be there to help them. We want to be there to not only receive them, but communicate with them and provide them the help that they need. And the last thing I'll say on is that, prior to the COVID pandemic, we were also partnering with the other jurisdictions that you have invited here today. So I look forward to that partnership continuing. We're stronger together. And I think that you have a great panel and great quality of individuals, even those who are not on this call, who are committed to making sure the Latino community and the small business community thrives for the entire region.
Thank you for that. I couldn't echo that more about grants and not loans. Mark mentioned earlier PPP funding, but the forgiveness of that loan is truly what's going to be important for businesses that took advantage of it, or that were able to take advantage of it. And so, I encourage listeners and panelists to think about grants and how we can support our businesses. And while payroll is certainly important and it's something that should take forefront, we also know that leases for commercial space are important, repayment of existing loans, equipment, etc. Any of that is the lifeline of businesses.
And Juan, may I just add one more thing? In that same grant conversation, we just started a Reopening Montgomery grant program last week. And that program is dedicated, again, to helping those same population, 100 or fewer employees who need help getting their doors back open. If they've weathered the storm to this point, if we can help them get past the next point, it should ensure that more of our businesses will survive and we can actually have a stronger economy that much quicker.
That's fantastic. And for the attendees, we're going to have all of this information available to everyone in our website. So you can go to the Greater Washington Hispanic Chamber of Commerce website to look at resources. But as always, you can count on calling any of us. Nicole and her team are ready and able to help us navigate through the many resources that we have. Also, we're going to have some time for Q&A. If the attendees would like to input their questions on the Q&A tab in the bottom of your screens, we'll make sure that we get as many as possible answered. Next question for Director Whitfield. Christy, as you know, our DC economy is diverse and rich. And what do you think are your next steps of the agency to collaborate and help us support you?
Well, Juan, again, like the other panelists have said, thank you so much for pulling this important discussion together. It's a pleasure to be here. I think that discussions like this are so important. I think that we have to keep having these discussions. I want to backtrack a little bit, and I want to brag about my deputy mayor, because I want to say that DC has done a lot of great work to get in front of some of the work that we've needed to do. you know, we want to make sure that we recognize that, you know, that brown people have been disproportionately impacted by the coronavirus. And we see this, you know, we know that Washington and Mayor Bowser and Deputy Mayor Pacheco made sure that we raced to the front of the line to make sure that federal resources were, you know, were available for our small businesses, because there's just simply not enough money. And that we were, you know, DC was first in line to make sure that those federal resources were available for our local businesses. And then the deputy mayor with the DemPed team stood up a $30 million pool of grants in 5 days to get the $30 million grants pool together, because we knew that those grant sources were what people needed to live. You know, we know that our small businesses were struggling, and we know that people didn't think that this thing was going to last as long as it was. And then we also know that there are additional grant resources that DemPed has available now through Bright Streets and the Resiliency Fund, you know, because we know that the businesses continue to struggle, and that we want to make sure that those resources continue to be available. You know, we have been trying to think of the most innovative ways to address and infuse our small businesses with these resources, because more loan funds are not necessarily what people need, but we also know that these federal resources are the best resource that people have. You know, we worked with as many resources like the LEDC and the CDFIs to make sure that in the second round of PPP funding, that we got as many people into that resource as possible. We wanted to thank our CDFIs to get those funds available, because people weren't able to access that capital for all of the access to capital reasons that we know that some businesses don't have. And that I think that the mayor and the deputy mayor put our reopen initiatives through a lens of hope. And I want to say that, you know, the things that we need to do moving forward have to all be through this same lens. You know, health, opportunity, prosperity, and equity. You know, all of our work has to be through this lens, so that if we're not thinking about the work we do through an equity lens, then we're not doing the right kind of work. You know, everything that we do has to be through this equity lens. And that leadership through the mayor and the deputy mayor, if it's not through that lens, then it's not going to help level that playing field. And, you know, and that's the leadership that has come from the top, from the mayor and from the deputy mayor, to make sure that we're doing it. And convening these types of conversations, I think, are one of the most important things that we have to do. And then I want to also say that the networking opportunities that the greater, you know, Washington Hispanic Chamber has is going to be one of the important things, because your membership has to talk amongst itself, because there are some difficult conversations that people need to have, and they need to have with each other. You know, we are doing things and we're putting things up on our channels, our Build Back Better series, so people can click and say, like, maybe you should think about a merger, maybe you should think about a pivot. And we have conversations with experts for you to talk about. And then we also have conversations with lawyers that talk about bankruptcy. We have lawyers that, you know, that talk about what would the steps be, because these are difficult times. But people don't necessarily want to come to a big Zoom meeting about bankruptcy, because nobody wants to be on the chat on the side about bankruptcy. But also, you don't want to pay $400 for a lawyer to know what are the things you need to do and who do you pay first. But these are tools that wealthy people use so that they can sort of pivot, survive, and thrive. And, you know, we want to make sure that people are able to pivot, survive, and thrive. How do you renegotiate your lease? How do you sort of realize what the next steps are going to be? Because the small businesses are going through this at the front lines. And, you know, and we are going through these conversations, and having these meetings and having these discussions have to happen. And you have to have these networks where people can have safe spaces to have these conversations with friends and peers, because we know that people are struggling, and we want to help you. We want to help you get that access to credit. We want to help you get that access to the next phase so that you can meet a partner, and maybe you can merge together and do something stronger. You know, maybe you can take that Ghana, and we know that the entrepreneurial spirit remains strong. We know that government is not going to be the best solution. We want to support you in that solution, and we want to help augment what that's going to be. But there is not enough money from one location, and we know we want to knit that together. So I think the best thing that the chamber can do is foster that fertile ground where we can have honest conversations. Don't bring us your perfect selves. We know that's not true. I'm an entrepreneur. I know what we have to do to baling wire and duct tape to get it through. Let's get it together and then let's make it work. But then we also know that the institutions have to be fixed. We have to make it so you get real access to real financial packages that work for you. And we want to make those things work too. And so I think these conversations that come together will help us really get that equity lens so that you can get a financial package in a way that will really work. And this mayor and this deputy mayor understand that. And that's why these messages and these meetings are really important.
Yeah. Definitely. I truly appreciate what you said, Christy. You were a business owner yourself, so you know exactly the trials and tribulations of having to make ends meet. And this is definitely unique times for everyone. One thing I'll say is, while we encourage support from the local jurisdictions and all of your agencies to help us go through this pandemic, I also encourage our attendees and our panelists, if we have income, if we're the few lucky ones to still have a source of income, we need to spend it. And spending it locally, ordering food out, engaging with tech companies, any business marketing companies. I hired a photographer recently to take pictures of my family during pandemic because, we want to forget about this, but we need to remember it somehow, I think. So I encourage everyone that's listening today to try to invest in our local economy and spend money in your neighborhoods. Last question for everyone. How as the chamber can we support your focus, and how can we partner with you to make sure that you are successful? John, may I start with you?
Absolutely. Well, one, thank you for having me on this. This has actually been really helpful just to hear my colleagues from around the region talk about what they're doing and how we could emulate that here in DC. One thing that I think is really helpful for the chamber to do, many of you may know the Latino Economic Development Corporation did a great job with the PPP loans, getting those processed. And making sure that people want to avail themselves to the programs that are available. So Mark mentioned an aversion to debt, which I definitely understand, but we have to convince our business owners that they can work through these programs. PPP is an interesting program because of the loan forgiveness that's there, and that yes, 60% of it needs to be used for payroll, but it also has somewhat restricted, but other uses that the working capital can be utilized for. And so what we have to do, and this is something that Christy and I work on every day, there's not a moment where we're not trying to think of how to get more people to use our programs, use the federal programs as well. Just to give you an example too, so far we've put out $30 million of grants. The council has put forth legislation to do another round up to $100 million. We'll still need federal funding from the CARES Act money that we're shortchanged in order to do that $100 million program. But even if we were to do the $100 million program and have put out $130 million of grants, it will pale in comparison to what DC businesses got through PPP, which is $2.1 billion. And so, Juan, to your question, really it is about making sure that businesses avail themselves to the opportunities that will work for them. And I think to Christy's point earlier, we're going to see that, not everybody wants to have a conversation about either bankruptcy or even taking on additional debt in a huge setting like a Zoom. but we need to do that one-on-one counseling and that technical assistance to make sure that they're ready to take advantage of it. I like to say that we're going to do everything we can do, but we need to utilize those federal assets as well in order for businesses to really weather this pandemic.
Indeed, and you know, technical assistance is something that we at the Chamber provide to our members, but particularly during these times, it's something that has been really stressed as a membership benefit. And you know, I look forward to our next mission. We were supposed to go to Colombia this year, so you would have had two pictures, one from Cuba, one from Colombia in your background.
Well, El Salvador as well. We went to El Salvador together.
Well. Yes.
Yeah.
Good.
So we'll miss that outreach, but that doesn't mean we can't find ways to work together. So the challenge for us, for Christy, is to make sure that we take that same sort of effort, and maybe that time that we were all going to be together in Colombia, we get together and we just reach out to businesses to make sure that they're taking advantage of programs. So you have my commitment to keep working with you on that.
Thank you so much. Let's stay in DC. Christy, how can we help?
You know, I think we have to just keep those conversations going. I think we also have to, you know, continue to create these safe spaces. The truth of COVID is that everyone is suffering. And I think the hard part is to find those silver linings. The fact that we have to say, listen, COVID is tough and COVID is hard, but there are abilities to pivot, you know, find those pivots so that people can say, all right, how do I pivot my business model and find that next phase so that it's not all gloom and doom. I mean, we take that gloom and doom and then pivot. And then what do we do from there? And we gotta sit with the pivot, you know, sit with the gloom and doom for a minute and then say, that's real. And then what are we gonna do with that? Because there are people, a lot of our businesses had colds, and there were things that we needed to, you know, things that we needed to clean up. And we all know this, that we were all wanting to work on. And now we need to sort of get real about that. And then COVID, you know, somebody gave me this, you know, this nugget. They said, I keep telling people, now is the time for us to kiss change, flesh on the mouth. You know, you can't keep waiting for things to go back to normal. This is our normal, people. This is our normal, and we're going to move forward from here. And so we can't wait for 2019 to come back. We got to look forward to 2021. Markets are changing, rules are changing, and the gather economy is gone for the time being. And so what are we doing moving forward? And how are we going to adapt? And entrepreneurs are the best people to adapt. We are the best people to adapt and set the new norm. So let's adapt and set the new norm, and let's talk about what that is. And then let's talk about what we need for that, and let's create it together.
You know, you're absolutely right. This is our new normal for now, and we don't have time to wait or to waste. So very well noted. You know, I've noticed that we still have multiple businesses, restaurants, frankly, opening during this past few weeks. And that to me is amazingly enterprising and amazingly courageous. But it truly speaks about the power of the economy here in DC. And I mean Greater Washington, and how impactful it can be for everyone. Thank you, Christy. Victor, how can we partner and help?
Well, I think there are so many resources out there right now, and a lot of people have taken advantage of them. There have been over 21,000 PPP loans in Fairfax County. You know, I think like 60,000 throughout the region. So people have been accessing resources for lending, but I think they should also access and focus on technical resources, knowledge resources. In Fairfax County, we have 5 free business counselors. We will counsel people from outside the jurisdiction. You do not have to be a resident business in our county to come and get those services. And it's the same thing in Arlington County. Actually, that's where we got the model from. They use SCORE counselors. These are people who have owned businesses, currently own businesses, serial entrepreneurs, own real estate, that have knowledge and they want to give it away. We've had counsel people in technology as well as food services. So that's one thing, just the free technical services. Another thing you can do, you can drive people to our free legal services. we now have a group of attorneys that are getting free pro bono services for COVID impacted businesses. COVID impacted businesses. And that's what we're talking to here. If you could drive that traffic to us, we would appreciate it. Then there's this webinar series that I mentioned. There were 12 installments. We're now on number 9. Please send your people to these. These are all about growth. These are about how using technology to generate growth, how to use a technology, like DoorDash, if you're a restaurant, or a platform like Amazon or Google, in order to grow your sales without actually growing your infrastructure and cost, leveraging basically the technology that's already in place. So these services are free. Please send people to us so we can help them.
Absolutely, that's definitely something we can help. One thing I'll say is some of the challenges of having not being able to qualify or reach PPP, where many businesses were just not prepared. They didn't have some of the documents in place or the structure in place to be able to meet the requirements of those loans. And unfortunately, having that guidance one-on-one from the financial providers was just difficult and overwhelming. I, as a banker, have to say that we did our best to help our clients, and I'm very proud of what we were able to accomplish. And we did help the large majority of our business owners. But I saw that as a big obstacle, is people were just not prepared to apply for these loans. And because of that, unfortunately, we're left behind. But organizations like ours, plus with the support of yours, we should be able to help everyone be successful next time if we have a second round. Jerome, lastly, how is Montgomery County, how can we partner with Montgomery County and help?
Thank you, Juan. Yeah, I won't repeat what my colleagues said, but the two ways I was thinking of was inclusion and communication. The inclusion, we have reached out and we've had, the benefit of having a lot of chamber representation in our recovery committee groups. We have 5 different mission area leads, and my mission area is economic revitalization. And we have a task force that encompasses subgroups of small business, restaurant, retail, workforce development, life sciences, and hospitality, recreation, culture, and entertainment. So, the representation of the chambers in these groups within the government structure that are setting up the recommendations, the task force, and the implementation arms of how to get things done in the short term and long term are critically important. When you have a seat at the table and your voice is heard, it speaks volumes. And you're able to not only carry what you want to be heard for yourself, but you're representing others as well. And to me, that just multiplies the effect of what you're trying to accomplish. And I think that is always a win-win, especially when you have a government that's willing to listen. The other one is, communication, sort of like Victor discussed as well. We need all the help we can with communicating what we have available, as well as the feedback arm of what do we need to provide as well. It has to be a two-way conversation, and the more advocates that we can have to make sure that that conversation is happening is important. We, again, we tend to believe that, people are just sitting around a computer waiting for Montgomery County to put out a tweet and everyone's got it. No, that's not it. You got to get some feet on the street. You got to do a little bit more and make sure that, you actually visit those hard to reach populations and areas in our vulnerable community and our residents. So it's just a lot of work to do. And I don't think, well, I'll speak for myself, we don't have communication down to a science yet. It is still something that we struggle with, even though we think that we're doing a lot. We still find people who don't know information that we put out there. So as many advocates we can have in the communication arena, it would be always welcome. But thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're right. That is one of the benefits of being a member of our chamber, is access to these resources. So I'm going to encourage all attendees to renew your membership to our chamber. We also need funding. We're not eligible for PPP. We're not eligible for a number of grants and support, but we want to continue providing resources for the business community at large. And it is with your membership that we're able to provide content like today's content. So thank you all panelists for today. This has been a wonderful discussion. I'm going to introduce 2 wonderful partners next. Eric Hershberg is director of the Center for Latin American and Latino Studies of American University. He has been a great partner for us and has helped us jointly with Robert Albro on this survey that we presented a few weeks ago and that we're highlighting today. And Jim Denegar, a longtime friend, director business in the Capital Kogut School of Business for American University, and formerly with the Greater Washington Board of Trade. Really happy to have both of you with us. And I open the floor for comments from Eric first.
Thank you very much, Juan, and thank you to all the panelists, to Nicole and her colleagues at the Chamber. I'll just very briefly, I mean, I found this discussion, this panel enormously encouraging. I think that the efforts that are being undertaken by governments across various jurisdictions in the DC metro area are enormously important. With regard to the study that we undertook in partnership with the Chamber and that Rob Albro described at the very beginning of this panel, we at the Center for Latin American and Latino Studies approached this with previous crises very much in mind. I mean, we knew, based on the experience of the Great Recession, that communities of color were most likely to suffer the immediate and long-term impacts of a disruption such as this pandemic. We also knew that this was something that was going to be a protracted crisis, right? The virus was not just going to go away, as it were. And so we thought that our modest contribution at that point, back in the end of April and into May, was to try to document as best we could what the landscape looked like for Latino-owned enterprises in the DC metro area. And our thought was that with information, we could help to inform the Chamber, we could help to inform public servants who are trying to figure out how to effectively respond to the crisis. And we could also inform entrepreneurs, business owners who are trying to assess both the consequences of the pandemic on businesses and also perhaps some ways forward. I think one of the things that was highlighted in the report, and it's something that emerges in the interventions that the panelists have made this morning, is that resources are critical, and resources really take two forms. They take the form of capital, and they also take the form of information. And I think that panelists here have been very aware of the importance of those two ingredients for firm resilience and for firm recovery. I think that some of the points that were raised here by several commentators having to do with the concern of business owners about incurring excessive debt. I think that's very important. I think it's related to the difficulties that minority-owned firms have accessing the financial system. But in any event, in this moment of crisis, figuring out the appropriate balance between grants and loans and helping business owners to understand the ramifications of accessing capital in particular ways is extremely important. And of course, this is an instance in which the access to financing is related to the access of information. And I would just say that I think there's an enormously important role for agencies like the Greater Washington Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, providing the kind of access to information, the technical assistance that their members need. And I think this is enormously important. There's one other point, and I'll end with this, but Christy Whitfield emphasized a term that I think is very important, which is pivoting, right? It's not just a question of helping firms to survive, it's also helping business owners to adapt their existing firms and potentially to develop new firms. And it's very clear to us that not all of the businesses are going to survive this crisis. In fact, some of them might not have survived even under normal conditions, right? And so the task of policymakers, the task of business associations, of community advocates, is to work with folks to see how we can help them to pivot either within their businesses or in new businesses to adjust to a changing landscape. And certainly to the extent that we at the Center for Latin American and Latino Studies can contribute through research on various aspects of these challenges, we're very pleased to do so, and we welcome the opportunity to collaborate with the Chamber and others toward that end. So thank you very much, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you this morning.
Thank you, Eric. We witnessed many of our members pivot their business model and try to survive that way. And again, I think this speaks to the ingenuity and entrepreneurship of Latino-owned businesses. Jim, some closing comments.
Well, Juan, thank you very much for having us. Thank you for the partnership with American University and the Kogod School of Business. Nicole, thank you very much for hosting this, but also for sharing this information with the Hispanic-owned businesses. I join Rob and I join Eric in saying that the disproportionate impact of this pandemic on the Latino businesses and the health of the Latino community can't really be overstated. It is traumatic, it is generational in the damage that it's doing. And in order to alleviate some of that, I think things like these types of programs will put a spotlight on the problem, but also identify potentially some of the solutions. When you look at raising the awareness, it helps then set the table for grants and for funding and for special programs and for assistance and finance. That's a huge element that needs to be addressed, whether we go through a second round of PPP or not. There are funds out there, and the Hispanic-owned businesses need to sharpen their elbows and get out there and go get theirs, because the share for the Hispanic businesses is growing. They are, as documented in the study that American University did, the fastest growing business segment in the United States, and certainly a big growth area in throughout Greater Washington. I'd also say that with such promise, it's going to be very well worth reinvesting into the Hispanic-owned businesses. This is where the growth is. This is where lots of the startups are happening. And so I would say that as failures happen, as difficulties take place, we also need to keep in mind the reinvesting in these people who are working very hard and have proven a level of success, but for a pandemic. When you look at the overall impact and the balance that's disproportionately carried by the Hispanic businesses, you're talking about people who are higher on the infection rate. They're exposed more. They have higher death rates as it relates to this pandemic. Economically, they're being hit way out of proportion to others in the business world and in the community as a broad sense. I'd like to hit on a couple of different things and close. Latino-owned businesses were the most likely to start a new business, were. And I think when the Greater Washington Hispanic Chamber does this, it can help by facilitating access to capital. Where is the money? How do I get there? What are the types of programs? Victor was eloquent on talking about the 9 or 12 programs, and they're up to 9 now. Christy gave great advice, and I hope, and I know that this has been recorded, and I hope that people tap into this. 86% acknowledge the need to significantly change their business plans. 86%. But to what? What would you pivot to? I'll close by saying I think there are a couple of things that need to be considered. I think we all need to consider how we could jumpstart the economy for Hispanic-owned businesses, how we identify maybe 3 to 4 programs that directly benefit food and restaurant and catering centered businesses, but also landscaping. And are there different programs that could be done as it relates to construction? So get some money flowing. I'd also say that, and this is carefully stated, but that we need to assist with the very carefully winding down businesses. Not everybody's going to survive this. If I bounce a check, it stays on my record for 7 years. Businesses need to wind down in a way that does not hurt them for 7 years, does not hurt them for 5 years, does not prevent them from getting another business license or from getting another loan. This is an unprecedented pandemic. So I will say, I think that the Greater Washington Hispanic Chamber continues to put a spotlight on this issue. And by putting a spotlight on the issue, it then raises the sensitivity, the relevance, the awareness, and maybe that can lead to more funding. But I would also say, in the District of Columbia proper and around the surrounding region, if I go around, I see signs in Black-owned businesses. If I want to support, go out of my way to find Black-owned businesses, I can easily do that. I cannot easily do that for Latino-owned businesses. There needs to be a consideration of how we continue to put that same spotlight I talked about for what we're doing for programs for the business owners to the potential customers. And then third, besides that jump starting, I would say that we need to prepare businesses to minimize the long-term damage so that this doesn't sort of stay on their record, if you will, that this is something that does not cripple them in a way that prevents them from doing the growth of businesses that are really thriving in the Greater Washington region. We are an incubator for so many Latino-owned businesses. It is the fastest growing business segment in throughout Greater Washington. We don't want to stop that, but we understand there's real damage. Let's not make that permanent damage.
Indeed, let's not make that permanent damage. That is the message today for everyone, all of the attendees and our panelists. I'm gonna pass this on to Greta now. Greta has a poll for all the attendees, so we would appreciate your participation. And also, if you have questions, please do type them on the Q&A so that we can have the panelists participate and answer as we see fit. Greta?
Thank you, Juan, and thank you to all of the panelists. I do have one question here in the Q&A, but before we go into the Q&A, I'm going to go ahead and launch our polls. It's very basic. It shouldn't take more than 2 minutes to respond. I'm going to give everyone a chance to do that now. Thank you. Does everyone see the poll?
Yes, we can see it. Please take the time, attendees, to answer these quick 4 questions so that we can have
We're getting our responses. I see it.
Great.
Exciting. So while we're doing the poll, I just want to mention to everyone that you should really take a look at the chat if you haven't. There's a lot of resources that are being set in the chat from our various panelists here that would be extremely helpful to all of you, or to even assist us in doing the outreach that we're having so much difficulty doing within our communities. Going back to what Jerome Fletcher said earlier, it's not easy to get to our people and connect with them and to really find where they are at all times. We need as many people out there talking about it and sharing the information about what it is we're doing and how we're willing to support them at no cost to them whatsoever. So. Okay, we have about 44% of individuals. If everyone would just go ahead and respond to these questions, we can move forward. I see people are still answering. I'm going to give 1 more minute. Okay, I'm gonna just go ahead and end the poll now. And I'm gonna share the results so that we can all see what that looks like for everyone. And for those of you who are unable to see, maybe you dialed in, I'm gonna read out the questions and what the results were. The first question is, do you as a business owner identify as Latino or Hispanic? And alone as our attendees, we have 67%, which I think is a great number to have and to see. 33% are not, but it doesn't matter. We are here to support everyone. Our second question is, how is your business being affected during COVID-19 pandemic? We have 4% that said successfully shifted business model, which is great. That's the same thing as pivoting. Pivoting and shifting are the two key words here that we utilize quite frequently during these times. And then we have a minimally affected at 17%, affected at 21%, and severely affected at 42%. And then none of the above. Maybe some of you are just here because you like data and you want to know what's going on in the community, and that's fantastic because those are the people that we want out there talking about the things we do. Number 3 is, where is your business registered? We have a 38% for DC, Maryland is 33%, and Virginia is 17%. We do have a 13% that's other, and like I said, that's okay too because we want everyone to share the love. Our fourth question is, as a small business, what has been your experience in acquiring financial assistance and or resources available to you in your jurisdiction? So this is what we discussed earlier on, which is getting the information out there. How do we let these individuals and entrepreneurs know that we exist and that we're able to provide information to them? It's not an easy feat, but we're working hard every day as a community to make sure we're doing that. We have very easy at 8%, somewhat easy at 13%, and not easy at 54%. Extremely difficult at 25%. Those are numbers that are very important to us because that shows that we still have a lot of work to do. If anyone has any questions, please type it in the Q&A. If you have any information or resources to share with us, go ahead and type it in the chat. I'm collecting all of the links and the information being shared. I will send it out via email at some point today with any other pertinent information that's shared with me from the panelists as well. So moving along, I just want to get into the Q&A piece, and we have Jenny here that says, what's the action plan to make all these changes happen and make Latinos aware that those resources are available? I don't know if one of the panelists would like to take that on and answer that question. I could answer based on what we experienced, but I would like for all of you to take the time to. Juan, do you want to select someone to answer?
I'm gonna pick Victor since he's the closest to my screen.
Well, you know, I think everyone on this panel and really that's involved in this business is having difficulty getting information out. And the way that we do that is like this. I mean, that's what this is for. You're wondering how you're going to get it, how we're going to operationalize it. We're operationalizing it now. That's what this is for. We've dropped a lot of websites into the chat box. You know, pull them out, paint them and send them to your friends. The unfortunate thing is that there's no universal location for communication these days. It's been fragmented quite a bit. All of us have these individual channels that we work on, but we push information out through social media, just like DC does, just like Prince George's does, just like Montgomery County does. And that's really what we have. That's what we have available. Every once in a while, the news covers a story. You know, they do a story and accidentally get some information out there. But I think that the challenge is getting it to the people who absolutely need it. 54% said you're finding it difficult. Hit one of those websites, come to us, we'll help you. We'll help you right now. Actually, you can do it while I'm talking because I have people in the office waiting to help.
Thank you, Victor. Okay, so our next question, I don't know, do we want to give someone else an opportunity to respond to that question, Juan, since you're the moderator?
Totally. John, what do you think?
Yeah, so we are doing, we do a weekly check-in every Tuesday at 4. If you're in DC, you could watch it on Channel 16. You could also check it out on Mayor Bowser's social media handles. Christy's been doing a series called Build Back Better DC in order to get people really kind of the support that they need and be able to navigate where to go out and get the technical assistance. But I think to Victor's point, we are so fragmented in how people get information out. We are actually even using to promote some of our programs mail. Believe it or not, it sounds a little antiquated, but to make sure it gets into people's hands, we'll do that as well. But I would say that we're also open to more ideas about how we can reach businesses. And I know that one of the things that Director Whitfield likes to do is Christy likes to get out there and talk to business owners as safely as we can, but make sure that we're out there literally hitting the streets to bring the information to businesses. So we'll make sure we do that as we have the Great Street Grant coming up, Great Street Resilience Grant coming up as well, to make sure that people are aware of our programs.
So if I could just jump in quickly, and Juan alluded to this earlier, you all are doing tremendous work. And yes, there's some crossover because of the different areas that we are all representing. Part of the benefit of being part of this chamber and being in these conversations is having a place where I and myself and my team can make an action plan and include everyone, much like we're doing today, but in the long term. And so what we'd like to do is form a media campaign. My phone has been blowing up from Telemundo requests, Univision requests, El Tiempo Latino requests, and they're saying we need to do something in a collective effort because we really want to pull it together. And we completely, I mean, it's understandable that we all don't have time and attention to have one large regional conversation, which has been an issue on many accounts, but we're here to help. We have those connections. And so we will be reaching out to form something that is regional and will help our businesses know where all of your incredible resources are that you're sharing with us today. So stay tuned.
Thank you, Nicole. I'm going to jump into the next question, which is, what are the best resources for self-employed sole proprietorship businesses that are unable to benefit from the PPP program? Well, we're having that difficult time too, so it'd be great to get more information on that for small businesses that are suffering. Juan, do you want to pick our next responder?
You know, I'm going to ask Christy because she was a sole proprietor herself not long ago. So, Christy.
There we go. Hi. So, you know, I think that in this time there are actually a lot of grant resources, and I always like to preface this by saying, you know, in more typical times, it's entirely unrealistic to hope to sustain your business with grant funding. So let me just have said that officially. And now, having said that, you know, on the mayor's coronavirus website, we have compiled a list of, you know, as we learn of them, we put them on the mayor's coronavirus website, and we also have put them on our small business toolkit. In my last newsletter, we put them, you know, but I think, you know, LISC and Alice and Amex and Discover, like, but if you look on the coronavirus website, if you look on the DSLBD website on our toolkit, you know, as we learn of them, we just sort of compile them, and we try to have a running list. You know, I don't check or endorse them, but as I learn of them, I kind of keep a running list. So yeah, if you can find grant sources, look for grant sources, and continue to think of ways to pivot and run your business in a way that it can become an ongoing concern that runs in this market, right? I think, you know, you need to do both, right? And so I think that the technical assistance and the things that the chamber does and the Build Back Better series, you know, and, you know, the ways that we respond to the market as it is, and apply for the PPP and find ways to make it, you know, that you can get it forgivable. You know, we have resources there are other resources. So I'd say, apply for everything. Apply for every single thing. Well, and I will, let me say, with my very first response, and the deputy mayor can attest to this, when we first looked at the federal resources, my first response was, loans for distressed businesses is a terrible idea. That was my first response to the deputy mayor. And he said, Christy, this is what we have. And I said, yes, sir, we shall proceed, right? So that these are facts. And we want them to be forgivable. But I think, apply for everything, but then also look to sustain your business and find markets where you can also generate sales, right? So those grant funds, but then also look for ways to generate sales. That's what I would say.
Absolutely. And I'll go through the last question. Do you think or know if there's new funding like EIDL coming up? The answer to that is we don't know. We've been waiting for the next package to be released, and as we've heard, the federal government just has not come to a resolution with what that's going to look like exactly. We held an SBA panel a couple of weeks ago.
And we held two
SBA panels a couple of weeks ago, and they were able to give us some ideas as to what's available. So do check with the SBA on their website, and do check with us periodically. We're coming to an
Juan, can I say that if there are, that in addition to the SBDC, that our PTAC team is available to help people with those applications. In addition to, I know that the Greater Washington Chamber, that we have resources at DSLBD in addition to the other resources to help people through those applications. And so we just want to make sure that, the deputy mayor has made sure that we have district resources that are also, live bodies that are different than sitting on hold at the SBA. The deputy mayor wanted to make sure that there were live bodies to help people.
And Christy, you always are so good about giving out the phone number and even say what prompt to.
Yes, 727-3900, hit 7.
Thank you so much. We're coming to an end, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time, although we're a few minutes late. But thank you again to all the panelists for lending us your time and your knowledge. Thank you to American University for being such a great partner with the Greater Washington Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And I will thank my company for being able to sponsor today's conversation, which I think is very valid. We have a lot of interest from many of the attendees, so I welcome you to reach out to David, Greta, Nicole. We at the Chamber are here to help best we can. Nicole, I'll leave it up to you to close.
Thank you, Juan. I'm left just vibrating with all of the energy, and I'm very proud of how everybody has responded and what everybody is doing. We at the Chamber, Greta in particular, spends her days finding out about these resources. I know that she knows about some of the resources out there and sends our members to the resources that are relevant in the moment, but learning more and more about what's out there and also what's coming is so important to us and to our members, and we will continue to share that with our constituents. It's been an honor and privilege to work on this project with Robert, with Eric, with Jim, with our panelists, with you over the last 5 months, and it's only the beginning. I am deeply grateful to everyone, and I hope that the information we shared, and I know it was actually, is helpful, if only just to demonstrate our commitment to this kind of work. We take great pride in acting as the voice of our members and all of the Hispanic businesses in the area. We feel we must protect them and speak on behalf of them. We are our small businesses, right? The names that El Tamarindo, Crystal Insurance, the Calpro Group, Inca Cola, Mr. Carr, the Peruvian Brothers, Mexicali Blues, Friends of Puerto Rico, Pollo Campero, Laurel Plaza, the Golden Scissors, and I can go on and on. So I feel it in my heart that we're gonna get through this together. These businesses add flavor, sabor to our region, our communities, and our neighborhoods we call home. So thank you for everyone, for your time, attention, for your loyalty, and we look forward to moving forward with you together. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you to everyone that attended. Be in touch, please. Take care.
Bye-bye, everyone.